All right, somehow, some way, here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. Whether you are a first-time listener or a returning friend, let me welcome you and express my gratitude. I so appreciate that you would give us a listen. I'm wondering if anyone else has noticed in the last few weeks old patterns coming back round again. I think I was talking about this last week or the week before. I was talking about pain patterns in my body coming back around again. But I'm also talking about like other kinds of patterns, just thought patterns and even situational life patterns maybe. Like even right now in this moment, it is really late at night and the podcast has to go out in just a little while, and I'm making this happen at the last minute, which was a very common thing years ago. Longtime listeners might remember the late night ranting intros hours before the podcast would go out. But these days, that's not really how I roll with the show. You know, I've got things dialed in way more than that. Just so happened that this weekend, it didn't work out as planned. I drove back from the Berkshire Mountains today, from the Berkshire Yoga Festival, and I had thought that I would maybe record while I was there, or maybe in the car on the way home. I thought maybe I could do that, but that did not work. And it's a longer story than is worth telling right now, but here I am, like old times, late at night, trying to make this happen, and I'm totally spent. And, you know, I'm not going to say much about the festival right now. I recorded a podcast from the festival that will likely post next week. So I'm going to save most of my thoughts. And it's also just, it's too fresh. I mean, I just got back today. But it was really great. It was a really great festival. I'm super happy I went. And the podcast that I recorded is very interesting. I'm excited for people to hear it. It is like a yoga teacher industry thing. It's really for people out there who are doing the yoga teacher thing on a professional level, maybe more than just aficionados. But it's interesting and it's live, and I think it's good, and I'm excited to bring it to you next week. So you can stay tuned for that. But it is interesting that I just got back from this yoga festival, and it was definitely different than last year, which I think reflected some of the trends and things that have been happening in the yoga industry over the last year specifically. And many of you know this is just something I've been interested in learning more about and wanting to hear from different people who might be seeing different parts of the elephant, you know? And that would certainly be the case with my guest today, Reika Shucart. Reika is the host of the Full-Time Yoga Teacher podcast, and I came across her while I was getting ready to speak with Amy Echo recently, if you listened to that episode. And I was intrigued by some of the things that she was talking about on her podcast. I felt like she was someone who was really on the ground and doing it. I often say, what would someone who's doing it in like today's climate have to do to be a yoga teacher, to like make a living at it and like have it be their main full-time gig? And I don't know a lot of people who are doing that, much less people of younger generations than me, maybe. And so in any case, Reika is not only someone who is living it, but she also has this podcast in which she's been doing her own kind of analysis and inquiry into what's going on with the industry. So I was very happy to connect with her. I thought that she offered some interesting insights, and it is my pleasure to be sharing it with you today. Real quick before we get to it, Let me mention that if you are enjoying the show and you feel like you're getting something from it, perhaps you would consider supporting it with a podcast premium subscription. I am not running ads on the show. I rely completely on listener support to help me keep doing this. And for as little as $5 a month, you will not only be having a very big impact, you will also get access to the full-length archives of the show, which is quite a resource as well. So if you are of the means and the inclination, perhaps you would oblige me and become a podcast premium subscriber. If you would like to connect with me in ways outside of just listening to this show, I've got lots of stuff on offer: live classes, weekly discussion group, teacher training, on-demand continuing ed. I got lots of stuff. You can find all of it, podcast premium and the rest, at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, y'all, I hope that's good enough. Like I said, I don't really have the kind of state of mind I usually like to have when I'm doing this, but we're rolling with it. We're making it happen. I will touch base with you on the other side, but let's go ahead and get to it. Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Reika Shucart. Hello?
Hey,
Hi, Reika.
how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I think you've listened to the show before, but just to say, I'm already recording, so please, let's consider ourselves having just begun, all right?
Yes, that sounds great.
Well, it's very nice to meet you. There's been a number of convergences that have brought us together. I know you sent me an email, but like the timing of your email is really what brought us together, I think. For anyone listening, you have a podcast called the Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast.
Yeah.
And folks listening to the show know that, especially over the last several months, I've been having all these people on to discuss, once again, it's not the first time, but what is it to be a professional yoga teacher, and is it possible to make a living at it? And things do seem to have shifted since the pandemic, of course. And you reached out to me and you're like, oh, well, I have a podcast about that. And then when I was getting ready to talk to Amy Echo, who's just on the show recently, and she was pretty fantastic. And when I was getting ready to talk to her, I was trying to find, I always look to see if people have been on other podcasts or whatnot. And yours was by far the best one.
That's great to hear.
I just thought that you were, I mean, I know you're like a student of hers, so that certainly played into it. But it just seemed like your perspective was very down to earth in a certain way that I really appreciated.
Oh, that's good to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it was definitely confirmed when I was getting ready to speak to you. Just so you know, like one of the primary ways I got ready was I listened to your solo episodes.
Okay, yeah.
Like your every 10 episodes that you've done your solo bit.
Yeah.
Where you talk a little bit about you and a little bit more about you and focus a little less on your guests.
Yeah.
And that was super helpful.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for listening to those episodes.
No, I mean, I appreciate that you've made them and that you're putting yourself out there and that you're asking the questions that you're asking. And also, you're giving some advice here and there as well as to like trying to be helpful to other yoga teachers. And I agreed with what you said. Sometimes when people put stuff out there, like how to have a successful yoga career, I kind of think it's bull, but you were giving legit things because you're clearly out there doing it and on the street level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I guess what I was intrigued by is that your background coming into yoga was, I'd say, atypical. Maybe your childhood in general was somewhat atypical.
Yeah.
There's actually a word for it, and I can't remember where you your parents come from different countries and you end up not feeling like you have a particular home in either?
Yeah, I think it's like third culture child or something.
Yeah. That's it. That's exactly. I don't know if you got it right here. I think it might be off a little, but you know what I'm talking about. There's
Yeah,
that
yeah.
expression for someone, and you seem to really fit that bill.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
So, just for people listening, I heard you talk about how, if I got it right, you were born in Nepal and then you moved to Japan. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how old were you when you moved to Japan?
I was a baby. I was 1 year old when I moved to Japan. So when I grew up in Japan, I feel like the only country and culture that I really knew and the language that I knew, but never really completely felt at home just because in Japan, if you don't look Japanese, you're always kind of considered a foreigner.
You know, I've spent a fair amount of time in Japan. I had like a teaching gig there for about 6 years. I went twice a year.
Oh, really? Was it a JET program?
It was no, I had like initially through one of my teachers and a place called Yoga Generation. You probably
Oh,
know it.
okay.
They had like Ohana Smile was one of their centers, and I would do teacher trainings there, Heart of Yoga teacher trainings there twice a year
Uh-huh.
in the 2000s. So I did it. Of all the places in the world that I've traveled to, I've probably spent more time in Japan than any other place.
Did you enjoy
I
teaching?
did. I mean, I did very much so. I mean, like the dynamics between teacher and students were so very different. You know, like Jay Sensei. You know, and everybody was very respectful of teacher in a way that was really lovely. That wasn't always the case when you were teaching in the States. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
but also interesting because I certainly know like it's a very insular culture. Did you do yoga when you were in Japan? No. How long were you in Japan? Till what age?
I was in Japan until I was 12 or 13, somewhere around, maybe I was just turning 13. So I graduated from sixth elementary school, sixth grade in Japan, and I moved to United States. But in United States, I had to do because the month that we graduate a grade is different in Japan than United States. So even though I already graduated sixth grade in Japan, when I moved to United States, I had to do 3 more months of sixth grade, and I went on to do middle school and high school.
I see. And did you already speak English when you came to America?
No, I actually had to learn English from zero. So I was in the second language classes trying to learn English, and it was a big culture shock for me. Like you said, it almost feels like Japanese and American culture is almost a complete opposite. So
What do
it
you
was,
mean by that? In what ways do you see that? I think I might know what you mean, but what were you meaning when you said it?
yeah, definitely. I think in Japan, we are taught to kind of not to stand out. And I think in American culture, you're almost celebrated and rewarded to kind of speak up and stand up and be different than everybody else. Where in Japan, you're supposed to kind of be like everybody else. So
Yeah.
definitely, it was a big cultural shock, and trying to figure out my place was a challenge in the beginning.
And I understand that you did sports and that was helpful to you in that.
Yeah, sports, playing basketball for school teams helped me make friends and also learn the language and kind of, yeah, like start to feel like a more quote unquote normal American middle and high school kids in a way that I was able to make American friends rather than only making friends who are also from different countries.
Right. Were you good? Were you a good basketball player?
I was okay. I think that Japanese mentality carried on to me playing basketball is where I was never the star of the team, but I was the one who was always working hard in the background.
I see. You were shuffling it to the shooter so they could score, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And I was really good at playing defense as well. But definitely not a star or a most fancy player on the team.
Got you. All right. So you go to high school in Colorado as well?
Yeah, middle school and high school was Colorado, and for college is when I moved to California, Long Beach.
I grew up, as if you listen to my episode with Amy, I grew up in LA. So I didn't know Long Beach, but I certainly knew the area.
Yeah,
And when you moved there, you went to what school? You went to what school in Long Beach?
it was California State University of Long Beach.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, and I didn't play basketball for Cal State Long Beach, but I just played for fun for intramural, continued to keep playing. But when I moved to South Africa for my master's degree, that's when I started playing for their university team again.
Oh, so wait, so you did an undergrad degree there. What was it in? I read it was in sociology. Is that right?
It was in sociology. I really loved learning about society and also like kind of patterns that form in social situation and how human kind of forms into different groups and communities. And I think that enjoying noticing patterns is still there for me as a yoga teacher. I really love noticing patterns in human body and how people behave and stuff like that. But definitely it was sociology undergrad. And when I did my master's, I moved to South Africa. I went to University of Cape Town, and I also pursued my master's in sociology. And the focus was international studies or development studies.
I see. And I don't know if I know what that means. What
Yeah,
does international development studies involve?
yeah, it was such an interesting. I was interested in at the time during that time. I was interested in international development work. So maybe like at the time, my dream was maybe working for the UN or big international NGOs, working with different projects and programs in different part of the world, and learning more in depth in South Africa was such a great opportunity and place for me to learn, because if I would have learned that in the United States or even Europe, I would have learned from the side of giving aid. And in South Africa, we learned from also the side of receiving international aid and how there's so much like corruption and power dynamics that exist within like country that gives versus country that's receiving aid. So,
and sometimes, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was like recently having a conversation with someone about this. Sometimes there's like control that gets exerted as well.
Yes, there's sometimes a lot of rules to, receiving aid. Like it has to go to this, we have to be spent on this thing, or it has to be spent this way. And there's a lot of power dynamic that exists. Yeah.
So you did your master's in that. Did you seek work in that? Did you go do that work, like work for an NGO or something?
That was my dream. That was my dream for a long time. So after my master's, I decided that I wanted to travel for about a year. And I traveled and backpacked across South and Central America for 9 months or so, and started looking for a job in nonprofit and NGO world in LA. And that I found out that was a lot harder than I thought. It was a lot harder to find a job that actually paid well. I ended up working and living in Nicaragua for 6 months, working for a nonprofit organization, but it was more like stipend. I wasn't earning a lot of money. I was just, giving enough money to live and do the work there. And at the time I had a student loan, so I knew I needed to start earning money so I can start paying back loans. And it was really hard to find a position that I liked and also that paid well in a way that I could start paying off my student loans. And then I started to realize a lot of these jobs are office jobs. Like I didn't want a job that I had to sit in the office for 8 hours a day.
Yeah, it was literally the same realization that I had in like 1990 or something. I'm like, I don't want to work in an office.
Yeah. And that kind of led me to, because my master thesis was on volunteer tourism and whether that was who actually benefit from volunteer tourism, because there was a lot of that in South Africa. And that kind of led me to that job in Nicaragua where I was, it was an organization that brought volunteers to Nicaragua. So I was leading trips for volunteers. And then that eventually led me to working for a tour company, like a tourism company that was an active travel company that I was riding bicycles and leading trips in all the beautiful places in the world, which I loved because I loved traveling and moving my body. But I felt that it was missing the part of like, is this actually making a positive impact in the world, you know? So that kind of led me to eventually getting a teacher training and becoming a yoga teacher.
Yeah, there's kind of like a class thing there. There's only like a certain kind of person who can afford to do that kind of stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I guess I'm curious. I mean, I can't remember this person's name, but I had someone on the show not that long ago who organized like volunteer tourism kind of trips for yoga folks and stuff. And I did actually get like a little bit of backlash from people about it, like in terms of email comments about it. Do you have a feeling about volunteer tourism? Do you think that it's a good thing, or is it just virtue signaling that rich people do, or?
Yeah, you know, so my thesis was, in the thesis, my conclusion was that people who actually benefit the most from volunteer tourism is the volunteer themselves and not really the local communities. And I think there are certain organizations that does better job than others to make sure the work is done in an ethical and sustainable way. But I think there are also a lot of organizations and companies that's kind of just doing it for the profit and money and not much, deeper thought is put in. So I think it really depends. I think there are organizations that's trying to do their best. And I think rather than, coming in with the mentality of we're coming in to help, I think the coming in with a mentality of like, we're here to learn from you. I think that kind of attitude and mindset is very important.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard. It seems like the world of NGOs and where the funding comes, and like you said, the kind of like politics at play in that, it's seems like it has an underbelly.
Yeah. I think it's very difficult to do it well or do it in a way that is really ethical. Yeah.
So you were interested in doing something that would actually contribute in a positive way to the world.
Yeah.
And you had yoga in mind. How did yoga get into your mind? When did that seed first get planted for you?
Yeah, I think, both of my parents were Buddhists growing up. So, having to learn how to meditate or, we always had altars in our home, and my dad, I seen my parents meditating growing up. So I think that part was always there for me growing up. But actually like yoga asana, the physical part of yoga that came to my life was when I was in college. I practiced a little bit when I was living in Long Beach and started practicing more regularly when I was in South Africa during my master's program.
Was there like a yoga center in South Africa?
There was a Bikram yoga studio, and that's how when I first got really into it was a Bikram studio. And then I started branching out to different style of yoga. But I just remember like feeling when I started practicing yoga, like the asana part of it felt very in line because I love to move my body. Like I said, I played sports and I was always quite active. And the whole philosophy and the spirituality part of yoga felt more familiar to me because of my upbringing. So it felt like it was such a beautiful an alignment. I'm like, oh, I love moving my body. This is really, it feels really good to me, but I also love the this deeper layers and philosophies and spirituality that's also part of this lineage and this practice. So that's kind of how I got really drawn into it and slowly got more pulled in and wanted to become a yoga teacher. I felt like teachers that I came across at the time in my life, they really looked like they were glowing, from inside. And I remember seeing that and like, wow, that kind of planted a seed that like maybe I want to also become a yoga teacher.
Interesting. I think that's true. I certainly observed something about the yoga teachers that I gravitated to, that like they had some kind of quality that I wanted to have.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
So, okay, but you didn't get like a whole bunch of yoga philosophy from the Bikram studio in South Africa.
No.
After your master's in South Africa, where did you go and what was the yoga that you were doing after that?
After that, South Africa, I started traveling a lot. So I would just try to take yoga classes wherever I ended up, like getting a
Oh, right.
membership.
I remember you talking about that. Were you working for, what was that company? Backroads, you said, like some travel company?
Exactly. Yeah. So whichever city or town that I'll end up in for a couple weeks or a couple months, I would look for a yoga studio in those towns.
You
And
do the intro pack, huh?
exactly.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the way that you shared with about like, I've never had money or like support really from family or whatever, like so much. So like it trying to get the money to go to yoga classes or to like do training or anything has always been a balance and struggle sometimes.
Yeah. And I not volunteer, but I would clean the studio in exchange of classes and those
Hmm.
kind of things to try to make so that I could be able to take more classes.
I wonder if do they still do that? Do they still do karma yoga stuff where if you clean, you can get discounts? Do you
Yeah,
know?
there's actually quite a few studios in Long Beach that still, you clean a studio or you work the front desk in exchange of free membership.
Yeah, that was always, if you have a big enough community, you can get it to work, but sometimes it can be a hassle.
Yeah, I've noticed the turnover rate's pretty high because,
Yes,
or some
yes,
people are supposed to show up, end up not showing up.
exactly. That's what I mean by a hassle, because I remember running a karma program at my studio, and then at some point I discontinued it because it was such a pain in the butt.
Yeah, whoever's managing it always it looked like a challenging job.
All right. So I'm sorry, you said after you got back, after you were traveling all around doing Interpack, so you just got to sample like all the different stuff that was going on. What was the year? What years are we talking about? Do you remember?
Like 2000 teen, so like 13, 14, 15, 16,
Okay.
17, on those time.
Okay. So you were getting that was like a pretty peak time, I'd say. Probably a
Yeah.
lot of power flows.
Yes. And I met a lot of really good, like very anatomically aware teachers that was teaching.
Well, I would say was also like the peak of just like independent centers.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I mean, maybe a little bit earlier in New York, but in other places, I think there were some years behind where you just had like lots of people who opened their own places.
Yeah. And I know we'll probably get to this, but there just aren't that many of those independent yoga studios.
Yes, I know. But at that time, there was a lot more.
Yeah,
There was
definitely.
less a lot more potential opportunities.
And there was a lot more yoga studio that was just purely offering yoga, and I
Mm,
don't see that so much in LA anymore. I think you interviewed somebody recently about the boutique
fit,
fitness wellness
yes.
studio. So there's a lot of
Well, you know what's crazy about that for me, Reika, is I listened to your episode where you talked about that, and that was like last February. I just talked about it like a couple weeks ago. So you saw it before I saw it,
yeah.
because you were sort of you've been in it still. Like I've been in my own little bubble for a lot of years, kind of like out of the studio model scene.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, but we just jumped ahead. So after you spend that time traveling around and stopping in at lots of different centers, is that before or after you take that trip to Peru?
That was way before the
Okay.
trip to Peru. And I ended up doing, during my break from the seasonal tour company job, that's when I did my 200-hour teacher training with Yoga Works.
Okay, right. And that's in Santa Monica?
Mm-hmm. That's in Santa Monica, and that's where I met all the amazing Yoga Works teachers that you interviewed, a lot of them on your show.
Some of them. But you hadn't worked with Annie yet, but you didn't work with James Brown, did you? You worked with some of the other folks there. I don't remember the names. Who are the folks that you trained with there?
Malachi Greaves was one. With my 300-hour, there was a lot more teachers involved. So like Lisa Wolford or Joan Hyman, Mia Togo, David Lynch.
Yeah, and at that time, I think Yoga Works had a pretty strong standing, and their training was considered, to be strong.
Yeah. I think I still to this day really do believe the Yoga Works training gave me really good foundation.
Yeah, I think they kind of came up with. We were one of the places that did kind of come up with what I felt was almost like a sort of neutral training in certain ways, where you could go in a lot of different directions with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely now that later I studied with Annie Carpenter, and Annie Carpenter was really involved in developing that curriculum, so I can see a lot of Annie Carpenter's teachings.
Yeah, we could talk about that. I thought it was kind of interesting because when I talked with her, we kind of both had a bitch session about 200-hour teacher trainings. And I know you kind of started doing the one that she created, if I'm not mistaken, not too long ago.
Yeah, actually, I just finished the final weekend of that 200-hour teacher training.
We'll get to that. I guess I'm curious first to kind of get to where it landed. I was intrigued and somewhat shocked when I heard you say that before the pandemic, you were teaching 28 to 30 classes a week.
I was.
That's insane.
It is a lot. And I also know some people who taught and maybe still teach more than that.
But that's crazy. That's at least 4 a day, every day.
Yeah. It's a lot. And I don't think that's sustainable, and I don't recommend that. But I also understand some teachers have to teach that many to survive in LA.
Well, I guess that kind of brings me to a point, though, in terms of like, for me, and it sounded like for you, I didn't really have any other options or like another plan. So it was basically like, for that period in my life, I just went, forgive the expression, balls to the wall or whatever. You just had to like tough it out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, some people have another job or a partner that they live with that have a full-time job or something, so they don't maybe have the pressure of, like if I didn't work that many classes, I wouldn't have been able to pay rent. So for me, I had to do that many hours at some point. But that also, I think I gained a lot of experience really fast because of that too. I just taught so many classes so often that I think I grew as a yoga teacher because of that experience. But I don't regret it, but I also wouldn't want that for myself, or I wouldn't wish that for other teachers to have to teach that many classes.
No, it's not the best thing. And you also, I imagine, got to really see, I don't know, like how a lot of different places operate, like how different yoga center owners run their places.
Yes. So yeah, it's so much. I got to see a lot of the ins and out of yoga studios and the, behind the scenes, behind the closed curtain of what happens in the yoga studios.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting, but I mean, before the pandemic, there were lots of opportunities, but there were pitfalls. You pointed out a bunch of them in your Shadow Side of Working for Studios episode.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
I guess my question about that to you would be, in that time when you were teaching the 28 to 30 classes a week, I know you were doing a lot of different stuff, though. You weren't just teaching yoga. You were like taking whatever you could get, and you have other things that you've studied too. but like what percentage of that would you say was just like straight yoga?
I think it was mostly yoga. So I would imagine probably like 80% of that was yoga, teaching yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the beginning, I was teaching different things to make enough money to live, like spin classes or hit classes or yoga lattes, or like I just said yes to anything. And I
Mm-hmm.
was also dog walking and dog sitting and doing all kinds of stuff. But my goal was to slowly reduce non-yoga related job and just teach yoga. And I think right before the pandemic, I was teaching mostly just yoga classes.
So you had managed to kind of
Yeah.
materialize that direction for yourself and have it be mostly yoga classes. Did you have good gigs? Were you happy with the gigs that you had? Like, did you teach at centers you felt supported at?
Some and not all. I think compared to where I'm at now, at the time I was just teaching a lot of group classes with lower pay.
Yeah.
Whereas now that I know, like, I have a more higher paid gig, like corporate yoga or private yoga or
Mm.
doing events. So now I don't have to teach as many classes and I can earn more money because just individual classes and the opportunities are more better quality opportunities.
Right. And did you get it together where you didn't have to teach as many classes and maybe got some of these corporate or private gigs before the pandemic happened?
I had some opportunities before the pandemic, but I think I was still growing, and during the pandemic, or I guess after the pandemic, was when I started gaining more and more better quality opportunities. I feel like the longer I'm in the field of teaching yoga, more people I meet and more people recommend or refer people, and there's this you know better network that I have created for myself where people are recommending me to
Hmm.
and opportunities that as a newer teacher I didn't get those kind of opportunities.
And I guess that's the case for having the studio gigs because
Hmm.
the studio gigs, you meet people. Isn't that the
Yeah.
deal?
Yeah, I think so. And I think studio classes are important in a way that, like, I'm meeting people, I get in front of more faces, and it's a great way to kind of get myself out there. So I
Hmm.
think I will keep somewhat of, I don't know how many, but I would always will want to have some studio classes that I teach just because I get to keep meeting people.
Hmm.
But knowing that that's not where I can make majority of my income from, that's going to be usually studio gig is going to be more, it's going to pay less than other opportunities I can create for myself. But just meeting people and getting myself names out there in studio can get me those, good opportunities.
I guess yes. The part of that it's contingent on is that the studio brings people in. That was always the deal. Like the
Yeah.
studios bring the people in, the teachers keep them coming back.
Yeah.
Hopefully the split or the fee you were getting felt fair.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and in the studio, studio did all the, promotion for you. You didn't
Mm,
promote to make sure people come to your classes, although that might help. But depending on the studio, no matter what, people are coming to your classes. Whereas, like, if I'm teaching my own yoga class, let's say I'm renting a space and teaching at my own class, then I have to do all the promotion. Whereas studio, when you work for studio, like, they have a built-in community that's going to come take your classes.
yes. And also, and I heard you speak about this because I had the same realization at some point was like if you have all your eggs in one basket, like if you all
Mhm.
the classes you teach are at one place,
Mhm.
it's not a great plan because things can kind of go south in ways that you wouldn't expect with a center or a relationship.
Yes, it's so true. I really learned that a hard way, and
Actually, can I ask you about that? Because you did mention it, but you're not like me because I've been too transparent, I think, sometimes and gotten myself into trouble. You're much more diplomatic than me, but you mentioned that you had this experience. If I remember, you were doing some role in a teacher training, like teaching a module or something like that.
Mhm.
And you had done it a few times, and that there had been this common complaints that people were making that you felt you had to voice. And by
Yeah.
voicing those complaints, you got suddenly fired. I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, what was the issue? What was happening that you felt uncomfortable about?
Yeah, there was a common thread on the teacher training that I was being part of for that specific studio, that I was not just one group, but multiple groups. I would hear a similar complaint. And I finally decided to voice that to the owner. And owner's response was to take me off the teacher training program as the role that I had. And that led me to quit that studio as a teacher, just because I didn't like ethically feel aligned working for them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I had like all of my majority, 90% of my eggs in that studio, because I thought like, okay, this is where I'm gonna continue being part of their teacher training program and grow as a teacher, and I started working less and less at other locations. And after that happened, thank goodness I still had my foot in the door of other places that I could start picking up classes and still earn my living. But after that, it was a very hard lessons of like, okay, I already knew this, but I didn't listen to my own advice of not putting all my eggs in one basket. So that's something I try to, I guess, not everybody may come across that
You didn't.
lesson.
Do you not feel comfortable to say what the issue was? If you
Um,
don't, it's totally fine. I not. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But I'm very curious. What would it be? Because you clearly thought that it was going to be okay to mention it, or you felt compelled to mention it at least enough to like. I don't know. Clearly, they were upset or spooked or something or threatened.
yeah. Let me. Do I feel comfortable saying it? Hmm, no, I think I'll leave it as it is.
You're better than me. I think that's good. I guess the reason I'm asking only because
Uh-huh.
there are these kind of issues that have come up in the yoga world. I know, we've all had to reckon with teachers who did things that we didn't feel comfortable about, or even I know at one point I had a teacher who just was behaving in a way that I wasn't cool with. And so, we've come up against it over the years, and I imagine other people have been in similar situations. So,
Mm,
hmm.
yeah, yeah, very similar. Like the situation like that. I just didn't agree with one of the teachers'
Yeah,
behavior,
yeah,
and that was a common complaint that I received from the students because they felt comfortable opening up to me.
right.
And when I told the owner about the concern, it was obvious that which side or who the owner chose to protect.
Yeah. It
And
wasn't going to be a conversation about it, huh? Yeah, yeah.
that
Yeah.
made it very clear for me that I didn't, ethically and morally feel good continuing to work there anymore. So.
Yeah, but that experience also is a big learning where you're like, okay, I got to have my own thing.
Yeah, that was a big, big awakening for that as well too. And in the pandemic, I think, talking to a lot of teachers on the podcast, a lot of full-time yoga teachers, it seemed like pandemic was a big turning point of like, okay, now I need to start my own thing. Or, during the pandemic, there were so many teachers, let's say a lot of yoga works teacher too. Like if they were really popular teacher before the pandemic, during the pandemic, they realized if they started offering their own Zoom classes and every student paid $10 or something, they just
Hmm.
made way more money than working for a studio.
Yup. It
So,
happened. And at some point,
yeah.
beginning, people were like doing the Zoom classes for studios.
Hmm.
But then they realized, wait a second, it's just a Zoom count in my living room.
Yeah.
And the studio started closing down. But at a certain point, you're right. And you didn't even need a big group. If you had
Hmm.
5 to 10 people who wanted to practice with you every week,
Exactly. Yeah.
you could
So
have
some
your
of
own
the
thing.
popular teachers were making, if they had like 30, 40 people in a Zoom room, so they realized how much money they could actually make just working for themselves, not working for studios.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of Jay Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.